Chapter 8. Ava cleared her throat. Brock was just going to have to listen to her this one time, then he could go on ignoring her. I was assigned to your platoon because higher-ups thought someone from your team was selling information on weapon locations and transfer routes. Officer Boyer agreed to the plan, although I don't think he had much choice.
Jared Boyer?
Remy questioned. Ava nodded.
Why didn't he just come to me?
Because it could have been you. He didn't know, so I was sent in, she explained. Just so you know, he never really thought it was you. It was just a precaution.
What did you find?
He asked, annoyance filling his voice. There was definitely someone dirty in the ranks, but I couldn't figure out who. I didn't have enough time.
You had plenty of time.
We were constantly on the move. Every time we left a place, it was attacked and raided within the week. It wasn't only our own bases that were hit. Towns and private weapons dealers were marks too.
You must have suspected someone.
At first you, but I quickly knew you weren't the one. I briefly looked at David, but he was quickly crossed off the list too.
What made you rule us out?
Honestly, you were a military brat. You grew up military, you breathe it. It's what you are. It'd take a lot to turn your head. David might not have the background like you, but he's virtually the same. You both take your duty seriously. He grunted. Ava rolled her eyes. He really needed to stop grunting when she was trying to have a conversation. I ruled out everyone on the list except for French. He was the weakest of the group in terms of size and skill, but he's smart.
But you said it wasn't French.
He was acting strange, so I thought it had to be him. That morning I left, I was following French. I found him talking to a local man. When they were done, I confronted French. He told me he suspected that someone was tracking us and leaking information. I didn't believe him at first, but he had notes on every hit and everyone's movements. While everyone was overlooking him, he'd heard every conversation. But still, he couldn't figure it out either. So he started sneaking out to talk to locals. There had to be a communication point somewhere.
He could have been lying to cover his tracks.
At first I thought so too, but the more we talked, the more he shared. He wasn't trying to hide anything. He seemed relieved when I told him I was looking for the same person. He was about to peg me as the suspect. He was recording my movements too.
What originally tipped him off about you?
Ava sighed. I did. I must not have been as secretive as I thought. I was communicating with Boyer regularly. French overheard one of my conversations, not knowing it was Boyer on the other line, and he connected the wrong dots.
If it wasn't you, French, David, or myself, then who was it? Who survived besides us?
According to the records, no one. But you and French are listed as deceased. There must have been a cover-up. Whoever survived has a friend higher up.
How did you know I was alive?
By accident. I was in Vegas. I had just finished a job and remembered you had told me about a gun range you liked. I needed to blow off a little steam, and it was something you liked. Ava closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment. She had been so confused, so happy and furious when she found Brock alive and well. It was like a knife in her chest to know that he lived and yet hadn't bothered getting in touch with her. Did their relationship mean nothing to him? Brock had changed his name, his life, and he was no longer hers. He completely removed himself and didn't seem to care. It was only later, when the anger faded, that she had clarity. She understood. By that time, too many years had passed. They were no longer in love. They had both changed. It wasn't right to go back into history, not when there was no hope of changing the past.
Ava.
She shrugged as if it didn't matter. You were there. Ava had recognized him right away, as if her eyes couldn't see anything else but him. Her world was reborn and shattered in an instant. She left immediately. Her hand drifted along her stomach, soothing her. There was a brief time she was happy. Before Brock's death and after. But it was short-lived both times.
Why is French calling the shots now?
Brock asked, steering the conversation. He left right after the attack and contacted me a month later. He's determined to find the attackers and has been able to hack into top-secret networks. I've been helping him through the CID, but only when I'm not knee-deep in an investigation. At first, we worked well together. He'd give me a lead, and I'd check it out. But in the last couple of years, he's changed. He's growing bitter and hateful. We no longer trust each other, but we have no one else to turn to. I think it's become personal for him, but I'm not sure. Why else would he continue?
Why do you continue?
There are still raids and thefts, but not at the same frequency. Lately, I've been second-guessing myself. wondering if it hasn't been French the whole time and I've been running in circles helping him. Brock was silent. He looked at the navigation map and then out to the water. Ava didn't have more to say. He now knew what she knew. How he intended to act on that information was his business. She was done. Whatever lay in front of them, she would deal with, but then she was done. No matter the outcome. She had wasted enough of her life. It was time to start over.
It's all been about weapons. If it's been French this entire time, then he's sending us into a trap. 2 birds with 1 stone.
Alarm filled Ava as she remembered French's words. Didn't he say the same thing?
Does he normally send you out without a scrap of information?
Sometimes he doesn't know anything himself. It's normal for him to give me a coordinate and nothing else. I usually poke around undercover, but out on the ocean, we don't have any way to do that. And he's never told me to take anyone else.
I'm the exception.
You're the transfer, Ava said, wanting to backpedal as Brock's stormy glare pinned her.
What do you normally transfer?
He finally asked when he ripped his gaze away, settling back to the water. There have been a few times when we've been able to intercept transfers. I've been able to buy the intel for the next hit, but the seller still eludes me.
How can you buy something without the seller?
These guys are third-party thugs and are just the face. It's all done electronically through a secured network. French says he hasn't been able to hack into it yet.
Do you believe him?
I did at first, but now I'm not sure. She flexed her hand. I'd really like to punch him, actually. Brock's lip twitched. Did he almost smile? Warmth invaded her belly, but she pushed the feeling away.
If I'm being traded like currency, then something has changed. Last time I checked, I was flesh and blood, not electronic funds.
Many things have changed, she said absently. But if anything happens, I'll find you.
And I'll find you.
Will you? She questioned. He cleared his throat, evacuating the chair.
I think I'll check.
Brock never finished his sentence. The door snapped shut behind him, leaving Ava alone.
Remy fled. His legs couldn't carry him fast enough, and the boat sure as hell wasn't large enough. He held onto the railing at the aft, away from Ava's view. The water churned below him, the motor loud and ripe with fumes. He immediately became lightheaded but didn't care. He was much better out here than in the cabin with Ava. Ava was CID. Why didn't she just tell him? But he knew the answer. Remy wouldn't have listened. Once his mind was made up, it took a massive force to change it. He hated that about himself. He had plenty of faults and would readily admit to them, but his stubbornness was his crux. His mind floundered with the new information as he tried to come to terms with it. Everything he thought he knew was wrong. All of these years, wasted. And still he was no closer. Still, he had no answers. Except one, and probably the most important. Ava was innocent. It could all still be a lie. But Remy saw in Ava what he felt in himself. Whether it was from Ava's revelation or the way the boat shifted like a fun house underneath him, Remy needed to lie down. Since Ava was in the wheelhouse, he decided to take refuge below deck where there were hopefully no fumes and no soft brown eyes to observe him at his weakest. Descending into the dark lower deck, his shoulders brushed the walls on both sides. He felt along the wall, searching for a light switch. Didn't this bucket have portholes? He eventually gave up and used the flashlight on his phone. The light illuminated the cramped area. A small kitchen area with a tiny table sat in front of him. He couldn't see how anyone could cook in this space, but it was apparent that someone did since the counters and cupboards were well worn. On the opposite side were 2 open doors. He crossed over to the first door to find a bathroom only slightly bigger than a hall closet. He doubted he'd even fit in there. He sure as hell wasn't going to try. He prayed he wouldn't have to. Continuing to the second door, he ducked inside to the bedroom. It was big enough to fit a double-sized bed, but not much else. The worn blue sheets were rumpled from Ava. Something stirred in him, but he ignored it. There were too many things whirling inside him to know what any of them meant. With the light, he scanned the room until it glinted on metal. He wedged farther in, inching his way to the object. "You've got to be kidding me." Remy picked up the antiquated 6-shooter from the nightstand and inspected it. No wonder Ava came at him with a knife earlier. She was CID and all she came with was this thing. He set it back on the stand and dropped onto the lumpy bed. For several minutes, he tried to shove all thoughts out of his head and breathe, giving his body a chance to regroup. But being in a bed vacated by Ava only hours before wasn't helping. In fact, it was derailing his entire mind. Instead of sour memories, he remembered the rest, filling his head with Ava's inquisitive eyes, her soft skin, her boots that always looked so big on her, and the little sausage toes that dwelled in them. She hated her toes, but Remy, never having thought much about toes one way or the other, thought they were perfect. Now her fingers, those were magic. Having not slept the night before, Remy drifted to sleep with Ava at the helm, steering his dreams.
After an hour of sitting, zoning out at the seemingly unmoving water's edge while her mind sped out of control, Ava stood with a well-needed stretch. She expected to see Brock by now. There weren't too many places to go on the boat, and a person could only sit outside for so long with the sun and wind, chapping the skin and dehydrating the body. Slowing the boat, Ava decided to look for him. It was nearing lunchtime anyway, and she hadn't even had breakfast, which was a rarity. Her body loudly protested and missed meals. She knew he wasn't at the bow. She would have had something much more interesting than water to stare at if he had been. Ava peered at the back and couldn't see him there either. He must be below deck, she surmised. Bringing the boat to a near stop, she headed down the short steps and flipped on the lights. She didn't have to call Brock's name to know he was down there. His sleeping breath came from the bedroom a few feet away. Tiptoeing over, Ava peeked into the room to find Brock sprawled across the bed, hogging the entirety. Well, at least one thing about Brock didn't change. She remembered a few times sleeping on top of him because he had sucked up all the room. But he never would claim the blanket. That was always kicked off immediately. Sleeping with Brock was an adventure in itself. She ducked back into the galley, happy that he was resting. Knowing him, he'd wake up starving. And she'd already heard the first rumblings of her stomach. As quietly as possible, she prepared a simple lunch. Not knowing how much time they'd spend at sea, she'd packed sandwich fixings and plenty of potato chips to keep them alive. She had wanted to bring some fruits and vegetables, but there wasn't a refrigerator, and it seemed like more fuss than what she wanted to deal with. A small cooler was enough to keep the meats and cheeses from turning.
"What are you doing?"
Ava jumped at the sound of Brock's voice right next to her. How did he do that? He was sleeping soundly just a moment ago. "I'm making sandwiches. I thought you might be hungry when you woke up." Remy maneuvered Ava out of his way with a simple step forward. Not wanting to be caught between him and the counter, she was quick to move.
"You never put enough in the sandwiches,"
he said, picking up the start of her creation and adding several more layers of meat.
"It's supposed to be 2 inches thick."
The seriousness in his voice, stating the desired sandwich thickness, had Ava pressing her lips together to keep from smiling. "I forgot."
"What else have you forgotten?"
he asked softly. The words, while they marked a challenge, also hinted at something more intimate. What would he do if she told him she forgot how his hands felt as they caressed? Or how she melted when he'd kissed the back of her knees, his tongue hinting at the spot? Did she dare tell him? Would she even want to dare? "It's just a sandwich," she said instead, her voice a little higher than normal. He raised his brows.
"Here,"
he said, handing her the finished sandwich.
"I can hear your stomach."
Not able to deny the loud grumblings, Ava took the offered sandwich and bit in, admitting Brock did make an excellent sandwich. "What about you?" she asked when he began putting things away.
"I'm not hungry."
"Feeling a little queasy?" she asked.
"A little, but I'll get over it. I'll head up to the wheel."
"I'll go up with you." It looked as if Brock was going to stop her, but he merely grunted instead. Well, at least that was normal. He motioned for her to go ahead of him. She took that as a good sign. Brock seemed as if he was coming around and starting to warm up to her again. On the steps, she glanced back at him and smiled, noticing where his eyes were pointed. Yes, he was warming up.